Hi, everyone. I'm Mark Chisholm, and I'll be covering the promotional aspect of Anaplan's supply chain apps. And what you're seeing here is what you've seen in previous snippets of various things that have been demonstrated during this session, is the actual landing page. And where we're going to focus here is right here. But where I actually want to start is here, consensus planning, because, some may question like where promotions planning fits in the overall demand planning process. So let's go ahead and just click on consensus planning for a second. And what I'm going to do is just is scroll down here and basically show that, ultimately the outcome of a demand planning process is an agreed upon consensus, which involves inputs from disparate groups across the organization. And the more people you can bring to the table, the more accurate your forecast is going to be. And so what Anaplan is able to achieve is, because of its ease of use and engaging user experience, it's able to appeal to multiple groups across the organization such that they can have input into the consensus demand and have a seat basically at the table. And if you take a look here, you can see that, one of the stakeholders, if you will, is the stat forecast, which Matt already talked about. And you might have also a machine learning stakeholder as well. Then you might have, input from the commercial planning group, as well as from marketing and finance as well. And so you have multiple disparate groups being brought together. And if you think about how those people work and what kind of data they would need, it's completely different. But what Anaplan is able to do is bring everybody together so that they can kind of work the way they want to work with the data that they need, the calculations that they need, etc., and the decisions that they need to make, but make them part of a connected whole, and such that their input flows into as a line item in the consensus demand, such that now the demand planner can take into account everybody's different perspectives and inputs and ultimately arrive at, okay, what's the consensus plan going to be? And so promotional planning is is a stakeholder in that process, typically driven by your marketing or commercial revenue planning team, depending on how you're organized. But that's, one of those groups is going to be responsible for setting up promotions. So they're going to have the outcome of their process is going to be their contribution to the overall consensus demand plan. So then if we go back to that main landing page and click on promotional planning, what you're seeing here is basically, for a given account, different promos for that particular account. So you create promos and assign them to an account, and then you also assign items to those promos, and then basically populate different drivers to then ultimately arrive at what the promotional plan is going to look like. So in this particular case, we have Amazon USA, and we have several promos that we're running for Amazon. If we click on one, you can see here that you're able to, for that given promo, select a start date, how many days you're going to run that promo for. Anaplan then calculates the projected end date, but also takes into account how many days before that promo do you actually have to place orders to make sure that you have sufficient quantity of that product on hand when that promotion occurs, because you're going to have promotional lift that occurs as a result of that process. So when ultimately would you then have to essentially plan for, receipts to meet that promo? So what you have here is an immediate connection between the promo setup and the supply side of the organization, understanding when orders would have to be placed to make sure that product is on hand when those promos occur, and ultimately when your shipping orders have to be placed. And this all ties into the supply side, which we're not really talking about today. But ultimately, this, everybody's, these two different groups are connected together such that, once you decide, once you start planning a promo, decide on your shipping offset, that's going to trigger purchase orders on the supply side to then, basically plan for those products to arrive. You also have different promo curves that you also have the ability to select from, and each one of these curves has a unique profile that then would kind of determine what that demand curve is going to look like. And so what you see here is also the ability to add a new promotional item. So what you have is your promotional header, so you can create overall promos. Then what you do is assign those promos to an account or a customer, and then assign items to those promos. And that's how the process works. And then as we kind of scroll down, you can see that for a given promo, and as I select it, you can see we have 2 products assigned for this promo. If I click on the 25% off one, I have, we have 3 products assigned for this promo. And you can see here that a lot of these parameters are already populated in terms of like what the curve length is, because basically when you pick a promotional curve, that determines like what that curve looks like in terms of number of days. And again, you can disaggregate from, in this case, you'll notice that we're kind of looking at, days in this case. You could be originally looking at weeks, and kind of you can break that down depending on that curve. But basically here we have a 7-day curve length. This is what units we're going to need to spread on. So, and again, this could be based on historical information as well, based on historical promo lift. And again, what you're seeing here is kind of like a baseline starting point. And that's really what Anaplan's supply chain apps provide, is that pre-configured starting point. But then you also have Anaplan's, robust business user owned configuration capability that allows you to extend this as well. So potentially you could, look up historical promos and understand like what that historical lift is going to be, and then maybe have an override on this that allows you to kind of say, okay, we think it's going to be like 30,000 units or whatever. And then you also have other parameters that you can select, including like, is this currently in place? Is underway? So is it effective? And also to like, what's your promotional tactic? Whether it's like a discount, whether it's a fixed price, whether it's some kind of rebate or redemption, you're able to pick these different tactics as well, and also enter the drivers associated with those tactics. And then ultimately, you're able to also assign costs to these promos. Like if you have to have an end cap display or make some kind of investment, whether it be like an off invoice scan or something to that effect, you're going to have to invest in these promos. You're going to have some kind of outlay, and then ultimately that's going to flow into this calculated section here, which looks at what's your base plan, what's the uplift associated with this, and in this case here, we've got the uplift percentages calculated. Then you've got your uplift units, and also to ultimately what that what your promotional costs look like, and also like what your ultimate return on that promo is going to be. You define kind of your promotional details, your tactics, etc. And then and also to your investment, and then ultimately what Anaplan is able to do is bring all that together and tell you essentially what the ROI of this particular promo is looking like. So that's kind of how this sort of section works. If we were to kind of back up a little bit and look at some of the drivers in terms of these curves and so on, first of all, you have the promotional header section. So this is where you actually create the promo. So you can actually add a new promo just by clicking on a button on the dashboard. You pick your account or customer you want to assign that promo header to, and you can easily just create that new promo header and then enter the number of days you want to run it for, shipping offsets, etc., and whether that promo is in play or not. And so that's how you get to that header section. And then also too, you have the promotional calendar, which is in the form of a Gantt chart. So depending on your start date and end dates of your promo, you'll have that sort of Gantt chart that tells you sort of how long that promo is running for from a visual standpoint. Then once you have your promotional header, then you're able to actually go in and modify the actual curves themselves. Bear with me for a second. This is where you're able to then set those different curves. So in this case here, you'll also notice that we're looking at things on a daily basis, and you can pick your daily spread allocation in terms of like, here's your lift. How's that lift going to be spread? So you have the ability to first of all, enter that split. You could also, again, from an extensibility point of view, have all these historical splits available to you, and depending on the promo, and perhaps maybe it's a rolled over promo from a prior year, or it's a like promo, you could pick up that split behavior as well. So again, just talking about that extensibility of Anaplan as well. But also here's where you have the ability to, first of all, add a new promo curve, and then for that particular curve, give it a name, give it a curve type. Is it based on percentage split? Is it a unit spread? And then also how many days you're going to run it for. And again, these attributes have been picked up in the prior dashboard as well in terms of the number of days of that promo. And then you can see some visuals in terms of how that's looking. And then basically what you have the ability to do is also modify that promo curve or do like overrides as well, right? Where you can have, the historical curve, and then perhaps have another line that allows you to kind of do an override on that as well. But basically this is how sort of that spread is looking. And here's the percentage calculations that then determines how that promo is going to look or behave over time. Then if we go down to actually manage the promotions, this is that other, this is again that prior dashboard where again you have your promotional header, you've got the details, then you have and again the promotional curve that you're following, and then ultimately the details of that promo in terms of the lift of units and so on, and ultimately what your tactics are, what your discounts are potentially, and also ultimately what that ROI, what that investment's going to be, as well as what that ROI is looking at. And that's just a quick look at Anaplan's promotional capabilities insofar as the out-of-the-box supply chain apps are. But again, keep in mind that, if you want to look at things like checkbook funding, because normally there is a bit of a top-down process that starts with, well, what's our promotional budget going to be and how are we going to spread that, populate that across our different accounts and so on. If you want to have that top-down approach. And then there's also things like post-event analysis that determines, looks at the performance profile of all your different promos, and ultimately gives you a look at comparing them and which ones you want to stop, start, and continue. That also could be configured within Anaplan, as well as the ability to carry over promos from prior fiscal years, so that you can easily have like a one-button rollover approach that basically allows you to take previous promos, carry those forward to the next promotional cycle, and then give you that starting point so you can just easily tweak some details about those promos, but then they're automatically in place and available.